Hello and welcome everyone, this is Calebovitsch coming to you with another episode of Deck Check. Today we will be driving in the Eternal Throne format with another deck that is based around strangers. With another deck that is based around mill. With another control deck. Or maybe we will do all three things at once. Let me tell you about this deck. Now, this is what I'm calling Savage Broker because it's a name taken from two cards, Savage Incursion and Strange Broker. So this is a deck that is running strangers, but I wouldn't call it a stranger deck per se. It is a deck that is running mill, but mill is not the only win condition in this one. And this is a control deck for sure because it has tons of removal and is rather light on units. It is also a deck that has two main ways of winning, and I do like having a backup plan. And you honestly, depending on the situation, you can choose whether milling or just winning via phase damage is should be your main way of victory in a game or not. It just depends on your hand, on the board state, etc. Okay, so given the name, I will let you know what this is all about. And this deck is a bit similar to what I was running in the Expedition format in the recent Expedition ECQ, missing top 64 by a win. That one was a Savage Incursion control in the purpose colors, which means it also was running green. But I believe the Throne format has a couple additions to this deck, but ones that are very vital to its success, such as Hailstorm, such as Dark Return in the market, such as Annihilate main deck, and some good power fixing as well. Okay, so at its heart, despite what you're probably already seeing in the market here, this is a Feln deck. This is a Feln mill/control deck that is based on Savage Incursion, a 5-cost triple primal spell that is probably by now my favorite card from the Echoes of Eternity expansion. This one deals 3 damage to any target, could be opponent's face, could be a side, could be one of their units, could be one of your units, for all we care. If the enemy player has 10 or more cards in their void, you get to draw 3 cards, so this is a powered up Wisdom of the Elders. Also, if they have 20 or more cards in their void, you get to play not 1, not 2, but 3 6/4 dragons with flying and overwhelm. These sapphire dragons you can see on the left side of the card right now. So the goal for this deck is to power up Savage Incursion by milling the opponent, not milling them to death, but at least milling 10 cards, and then later 20 cards from their deck to their void, so that Savage Incursion can... Well, first it starts drawing you more cards, which allows you to mill the opponent for more, and then usually by the second or third Savage Incursion, third Savage Incursion is a very optimistic outlook for sure, you also get to put 18 power worth of flyers onto the board, and usually you should be winning by then. When it comes to cards that are powered up by the opponent having a certain threshold of cards in their void, well, there had been a lot of those, well, maybe not a lot, but at least a handful of those in the latest 2 sets, the Flame of Zalta and Echoes of Eternity. But there is a second spell from Echoes of Eternity that is very well represented in control decks, and that one is Essence Feast. It is a 2-cost Feln spell, and I still have to remember that this is a slow spell, this is not a fast spell. I don't know why, but for the longest of times I thought this was a fast spell, and I did misplay a game or two because of that mistake. This one deals 1 damage to each unit. And that is usually not a lot unless you run into Kindling Carver based decks or some other token decks or Yetis, etc., etc. What you want to do is go for broke with this card. I mean, this one has Life Seal while the enemy player has 10 or more cards in their void, but also this spell has Deadly while they have 20 or more, which means if the opponent has at least 20 cards in their void, when you play Essence Feast, you deal 1 damage to each unit. For each unit that you damage, yours or the opponent's, they die, but you also gain health while doing so. So this is a harsh rule, or a better version of harsh rule because it's much cheaper, etc. But it is also very, very conditional. So there is that. You also have to be wary of cards such as Electrostatic Distortion. Maybe this is better. Cards that say that spells deal -1 damage, because if your Essence Feast deals 0 damage, well, then that deadly does not do anything. But these two cards are rather not played in the Throne format or played against you usually. Anyway, so there's the Savage part of the name of the deck. So you want to power up your Savage Incursion. You also can power up your Essence Feast to have board wipes later in the game. But how do you mill the opponent? Well, there is one true and only way of milling the opponent in this deck, and that is via Strange Broker. That is the broker part of the name of the card. The Expedition deck I was running had 4 Strange Brokers and 4 Two-Faces. The 2-cost shadow units that mill the opponent for 2, and then their Corrupted Shadow mill the opponent for 2. Now this one is a 3-cost Feln 2/4 Rogue Stranger. The rogue part doesn't matter, it's a stranger anyway. When a player plays a stranger, their enemy discards the top 4 cards of their deck. Also has the option of paying 7 and exhausting this to play a Permafrost on a non-stranger unit, stunning the cursed unit for as long as that unit is cursed and doesn't have endurance. So yes, and you want to go broke on those Strange Brokers, which means you want to play multiples of them. This means that for me right now, Strange Broker is the mill card of choice, and it has overtaken cards such as Mournful Deathcap, which was my previous mill card of choice, or Sadistic Glee in a draft environment. Strange Broker is very good because Strange Broker scales. If you have 2 brokers, then each stranger mills the opponent for 8, then for 12, then for 16. So if you play Broker, 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 you've already milled the opponent for 40 cards, which is more than half of their deck, given that these stay on the board. This one is also very resilient to removal, especially the Throne removal, as it dodges cards like Torch, Annihilate, Hailstorm, etc. It is weak to cards such as Suffocate. It is weak to Defile, but I think no one is playing Defile in Throne. That is a card that is being played in the Expedition format more so than not. You don't care if this unit is permafrosted, well, if the opponent wants to harsh rule for a 3-drop, then you're fine. But also, when you're running multiple Strange Brokers, you have to have ways of drawing them. So this deck is running 8 copies of Reunite, the 2-cost slow spell that draws a stranger of your choice from your deck. Yes, just a Reunite, and your main target is usually Strange Broker. The other 4 copies are attached to Traverse Farm, the site that is a 4-cost that says strangers cost 1 less, and one of the 3 agenda spells this one places another Reunite. Also, at the end, you get to play Triumphant Stranger, which in turn, each turn, plays a stranger, which means if you have a Strange Broker in play, and you have a Triumphant Stranger in play, then each turn you have these 2, and you're controlling the board, you're playing another stranger and another stranger and another stranger, and you're further milling the opponent. Also, your strangers are probably getting upgraded and upgraded and upgraded. Alright. So the goal of this deck is to get Strange Broker into Strange Broker as fast as possible. But when you already have Strange Brokers in play, that means that any additional strangers you get to play also mill your opponent. And this is where Horus Traver, aka Horse Traveler, comes in very handy. This is a 1-cost 1/1 stranger that on summon gives you an influence of your choice. Now, originally, when I was thinking about this deck, and I have to tell you guys, this is one of the very few decks in which when I was thinking about this, how to build this, in my head I was running through cards. Okay, I want Strange Brokers, I want Reunites, I want Savage Incursions, I want Essence Feast, I want Traverse Farms. And as soon as I got the whole shopping list for this deck done, and I put it into the game client, the deck was almost done. I mean, it was missing 1 or 2 cards, honestly. So yeah, this is as tight as it gets, I would say. Anyway, You could think about other strangers. You can think about any and all strangers while you're making this deck, but if you're in Feln, you have hardy strangers, and this was one of the first cards when it comes to strangers I was thinking about. Strangers have +1 health, but this one on its own doesn't do anything. There are also more expensive strangers like Spellstorm Stranger that can power up your Essence Feast, your Hailstorms, etc., and even your Condemns. There's Fanatical Stranger that gives you token units. There are Grim Strangers that cost 2 and deal damage to the opponent while some strangers are attacking. There are the Influence Strangers. There is the Unfamiliar Interloper. There is even Varret, Hero in Training, if you want to go mid-range on your opponent. But Horus Traver has the huge benefit of being a 1-cost. Also, if you really need to, it can fix your power. It can fix your influence, not your power. And your influence requirements are triple primal for Savage Incursion, single shadow unless you're counting 1 copy of Makar Stranger. And also there are some market shenanigans, but I'll get to them in a moment. Anyway, powering up Savage Incursion via Strange Broker. How does it work and how fast can you get there? Okay, so let's say that on turn 1 you play a power. On turn 2 you play a power and you play Reunite to grab one of these strangers that you are missing from the following card combination. On turn 3 you're playing Strange Broker, you're milling the opponent for 4 cards. On turn 4 you play your 4th power, you're playing Strange Broker number 2, you're milling the opponent for 8. Then for the remaining power you're playing Horus Traver, you're milling the opponent for 8. That means 4 plus 8 plus 8 equals 20, so the opponent has at least 20 cards in their void. So on turn 5 you can play a power and play a fully powered up Savage Incursion. That will allow you to play 3 6/4 dragons with flying and overwhelm, and you get to refill your hand by 3 cards. And Horus Traver fixes you for that 3rd primal that you might be missing by that point. So I believe that scenario is rather good. Another way of playing this scenario out, a bit slower one, is you get to do 1, 2, and 3 turns something. Like you can do Reunite on turn 2, you can do Hailstorm on turn 3 if you're playing against an aggressive deck. But let's say you play Traverse Farm on turn 4, and you Reunite and you grab a stranger that you're missing. Then while Traverse Farm is in play, your strangers cost 1 less. So on turn 5, you can play Strange Broker, Horus Traver for just 4 power. You don't even need your 5th power. And then on turn 6, you have a fully powered up Savage Incursion. Those are obviously the goldfish scenarios, i.e. your opponent is not interfering with your plans that much. But yeah, they will. And this deck has a ton of resources and a ton of cards that want to stop your opponent's units. It is kind of lacking some sorts of interaction against control decks, and I remember a game I played against a unitless Ixten deck that I lost very heavily to. Yeah, it also depended on the cards I drew and the opponent drew, and they drew a ton of cards, and you're milling your opponent, so against a control deck, in theory, you should have a leg up with that. Anyway, let's get to the other cards from the deck. So we are running 8 of these strangers that combo out. I mean, Strange Brokers are the main part. Horus Traver is just your support unit. But given that you're running 8 Reunites, I also included 1 copy of Makar Stranger. You know, the stranger that when a player plays a stranger, they steal a card from the top of their enemy's deck. And also when this attacks, you get to kill a non-stranger enemy unit. So this is plan B if somehow your Strange Brokers are not doing their thing. Next up, you have 4 copies of Permafrost, the 1-cost Primal Curse that stuns the cursed unit. You have 2 copies of Tome of Horrors. This is my favorite card from the Promise by Firelight set, and it also combos really well with Savage Incursion. There's a 2-cost Feln Relic that you might have seen in a ton of my videos, both Deck Check and Eternal Highlights. And this card has 2 modes. One is when one of your units deals damage, the enemy player discards that many cards from the top of their deck. But also once per turn you may pay 4 to draw the top card of the enemy player's deck. So option 2 is mainly as a backup plan if you can't get your dragons and you want some card advantage midway through the game. You can just keep drawing cards from your opponent's deck, and paying 4 to draw a card, even if it's from your opponent's deck, is a good thing. Especially that if the opponent took care of your win conditions, then this one means you get to steal your opponent's win conditions. In a very unit light deck, and this is one of those, I don't want to be running 4 copies of Tome of Horrors, and it was that deck in Expedition that was also running Brokers and Two Faces and Savage Incursions. It had 2 copies of Tome of Horrors, and I believe that in a unit light deck that relies on powering up cards like Savage Incursion, 2 copies of Tome of Horrors are actually the decent amount, the correct number. If one of them gets killed, so be it. This is not your main win condition. Your main win condition is still Strange Broker into Savage Incursion. Anyway, 4 copies of Traverse Farm. I've already talked about this one. Next up is the trickiest card, well, one of the trickiest cards from this one. It is 4 copies of Condemned. This is a 1-cost fast shadow spell that deals 1 damage to an enemy, has lifesteal, and if the enemy dies this turn, it gets void bound. Fun fact, if you target a site and the site gets put into the opponent's void, it also gets void bound and cannot be gotten back with cards like Turn Back Time. Also, you may swap a card from your hand with a 1-cost card in your market. So in the market, and I'm gonna make an exception and talk about my market right now. So we have 1 copy of Dark Return, the 1-cost shadow slow spell that draws a unit from your void. It gets +1/+1. And what are you bringing back? Strange Broker to mill the opponent even more. You have 1 copy of Edict of Makar, the 1-cost shadow slow spell. An enemy unit of your choice can't block this turn, or if it's time or justice, kill it. And you want to be killing a lot of time and justice units because these are the bigger ones. You have 1 copy of Swift Refusal, 1-cost fast primal spell that negates an enemy spell that isn't fast. Hint, hint, Harsh Rule, or Shenra Speaks, or one of those. Or just a huge flame blast to your face. But this market also is running 1 copy of Adjudicator's Gavel, the 1-cost Justice Cursed Relic that says cards can't leave the cursed player's void, and 1-cost and Ruin 1-cost fast fire spell that kills an enemy attachment. And I'm gonna say it up front, you can run Ruin or you can run Bore. It is up to you. I'd rather have a one-of-use fast spell than a potential multiplying slow spell here, because that spell, the killing an enemy attachment being fast, sometimes and usually overweighs being able to kill multiple attachments. But your mileage may vary, your matchups may vary, and this is the easiest switch you can make here. Okay, so this is the market that is running not only Feln cards, and as you can see in the power base of this deck, you can only see Feln sources, which means primal and shadow sources of power. Influence, however you call it. And this deck is also running, amongst other things, 4 copies of Feln Insignia, and you don't have any cards from other factions in your deck. You don't have any Justice cards, you don't have any Fire cards, you only have Primal and Shadow cards in your main deck, which means your Feln Insignia come into play ready, not depleted. So the main trick is, if you already have triple Primal and you already have double Shadow, and you're playing Horus Traver, and you have 4 copies of Horus Traver, 4 copies of Reunite, and 4 copies of Reunite from Traverse Farm, you can gain influence of your choice, being Fire or Justice. And the opponent is thinking, wait, he's crazy. He has non-depleted Feln Insignia. He's getting other colors. What can he do? But the fact that the fast market spells from Echoes of Eternity don't care about colors of cards they're getting from your black market, or how it's called market right now, you can put crazy stuff in here like Gavel and Ruin, because Feln usually doesn't have ways of messing with the opponent's void unless you're counting cards like Waylay, but you don't want to be stealing the opponent's void because you want it to be filled to the brim to power up your Savage Incursion, and it doesn't have good ways of dealing with opponent's relics or attachments, the only one being Burglarize, but Ruin is much better and much faster. Also, the fact that you are not running non-Feln cards main deck means that if you don't draw your Justice Source or your Fire Source, you can use Condemn just to get your Dark Return or your Swift Refusal or your Edict of Makar. And that is the funniest thing about deck building I have done lately, if I have to be honest, and I'm kind of proud of it. I mean, most of you already thought about it, but at least I can feel proud about myself for a moment. Thanks, Caleb. Anyway, rounding out the deck, we have 4 copies of Annihilate, the 2-cost fast shadow spell that kills a unit with a single faction, and the main target of this one, and the fact that I am running 4 copies of this, is Grot of Stranger. If you're playing against some other strangers, and you can be playing against other strangers, and you will be playing against other strangers, and these will be fun and remarkable games usually, more often than not. 4 copies of Essence Feast, I've already talked about that this is your harsh rule on a cheap stick, but you have to power it up. You have 2 copies of Reread, the 2-cost primal slow spell that draws a spell from your void. It gets void bound, and this card honestly has been overperforming because this can be either copies 5 and 6 of your Savage Incursion, of your Essence Feast, even of your Hailstorm, or of your Condemn if you want to grab another card from your market. Or if you grab a spell from the market like Ruin, you can play it once again. 4 copies of Reunite, I've already talked about that. 4 copies of Hailstorm. Now this is here instead of 4 copies of, what was the other one called? Armod's Designs, the slow shadow spell that kills all units costing 2 or less. Because if you have Traverse Farm and you have Strange Broker, then you're just killing your own brokers. And Hailstorm catches many more cards. Also, you can play double Hailstorm to deal 6 damage to each unit, which kills like 90% of the stuff at least. Rounding out, we have 4 copies of Wisdom of the Elders, the 3-cost fast double primal spell that draws you 2 cards, and Savage Incursion being the main part of the deck. Now this deck is running 26 power sources, and I'm thinking between 26 and 27, but I am testing out the 2nd copy of Reread here right now. Unless you want to cut one, I don't know. This deck is so tight-knit, I don't know what you want to be taking out. Maybe 1 copy of Permafrost to play a 27th power. Also, I don't want to be running Seek powers in here because you usually don't have any influence problems. This deck is rather light on your influence requirements. And honestly, Seek powers are just more often than not depleted power sources, so I'd rather be running 1 more sigil here. So we have 4 seats with those multiple sigils. We have 4 copies of Feln Insignia that do not come into play depleted. You have 4 copies of Crest of Cunning. You have 10 sigils, and you have 4 copies of Cobalt Waystone. Okay, so what are the cards that you worry about the most when you're playing against your opponents? I'm gonna tell you a couple of hints here. One of them is Kato, Arena Herald, when you're playing against a Carver deck, usually, because you're milling the opponent, so that means usually, well, the opponent is killing a lot of their small things, so they are powering up their void, which means your Savage Incursion is bigger earlier. On the other hand, you're also powering up the opponent's void, so they're playing their giants earlier. Although if they don't have a shrine to carve it and those giants don't have charge, you don't care about that much. Another problematic card is called Grot of Stranger, probably. Because A, it's a stranger, so when the opponent plays it, they mill you off of your strange brokers. But also, this has the clause of when this attacks, shuffle a void of your choice into its owner's deck. And this is one of the reasons why A, I'm running Adjudicator's Gavel in the market, and more often than not, when I'm playing against strangers, this is my first catch. But also this is why I'm playing 4 copies of Annihilate main deck, because if the opponent plays a Grot of Stranger and they want to play a card that gives Grot of Stranger killer and you have any units they can killer, then you want to annihilate it in response to that. Third card this deck does not like is called Royal Decree. Transform a non-power card in the enemy hand into a Seek Power. Onslaught, transform each other copy in their hand and deck. And this is very problematic if this catches a Strange Broker that you have in your hand, if you don't have any in play or in your void. Then your game plan becomes rather problematic and it relies a bit more on Tome of Horrors. Because if you don't have any Strange Brokers, well, this is your main mill engine. You're not running any Malaises, you're not running any other things such as that. So powering up your Savage Incursion takes much longer. And you need to be more, how to say it, more creative. Okay, so these are the 3 most problematic cards in theory against this deck. With, I mean, none of them are unbeatable. So yeah, there is that. Also, when it comes to the power level of this deck, I believe it is around, I would rate it around tier 2, unless someone can power it up even further than turn 5 Savage Incursion for 3 dragons. And I did have a rather nice play, or rather win streak with playing it. I mean, after I created it, I won the first 6 games with it. So there is that. Anyway, enough of chit-chat, enough of theory. Now let me show you 3 games being played with Savage Broker. Also, you might see some small card differences in those versions. For example, in one of the first versions of this deck, I was running 2 copies of Mirror Image. Play a copy of one of your units, the 3-cost slow primal spell, with Mirror Image being able to be played mainly on Strange Broker to have even more brokers. So I don't remember, but you might see 1 or 2 copies of this in one of those games. But after all, I believe Reread is a much more important card than that one. Anyway, let's get to the games. Alright, and we have game number 1. And we already see a Strange Broker and some board interaction. So this is not a perfect hand, but this is a keepable hand, I would say. You might also want to redraw it to try and grab something better. Some more card draw, and as you can see, there is a Mirror Image here already. We have card selection in Crest of Cunning, we have card draw in Wisdom of the Elders, and we have mass card interaction in Hailstorm. And we have me playing with the opponent's totem. Womp womp. Anyway, Cobbled Waystone, I don't believe we need that one. We already have 4 power. I mean, 5 power is the most you technically need in this deck, unless you want to be running multiple copies of a card. Miner's Musket is a card. It is not a huge problem. And here we can see the Scout bug. And that's a joke, meaning scouting a card to the bottom of your deck and still drawing another copy of that card. Anyway, that Miner's Musket is gonna bump us a couple of times, but we don't care about it that much. When it comes to ramp units, I usually want to kill them as early as possible, which means I want to Hailstorm that unit away, ASAP. Also, yeah, if we can go Traverse Farm on turn 4, that with the opponent not having anything on the board, that would be perfect. Champion of Impulse. Okay, we can permafreeze that one. Then it doesn't do anything, and the opponent is down to 3 cards in hand, which should be rather good for us. So let's get Fate's Aegis. Let's freeze that one. We also have power enough to play Wisdom of the Elders. Yushkov the Usurper. That is something we will need to kill soon. But being power efficient, let's draw cards first, let's annihilate later. Tome of Horrors is decent, Crest of Cunning is decent, Horus Traverse is something I want to leave after I get Traverse Farm going. And let's see what we have here. Essence Feast. No, I don't believe that is going to be necessary this time. Now, on turn 6, in theory, I could play a Primal Sigil, Traverse Farm, grab Strange Broker, play Strange Broker, play Horus Trevor, mill the opponent for 8, so the opponent has more than 10 cards in their void. Or I could wait to play Mirror Image first. And we have Savage Incursion, so we could go for broke here for broker here in a moment, like 2 brokers, etc. So yes, I'm gonna reunite for broker. I'm gonna play the sigil, and given the opponent is not too going too fast here on us, just playing Grotov's Burden. That means I don't have to hurry as much. We could go for Stranger's Mark on one of the opponent's units. We could go for Unity Within. Yes, let's make that into a Stranger. That's probably a mistake because Triumphant Stranger can then later get us the Endurance Stranger, and then their unit does not have... Excuse me. And then their unit is not permafrozen anymore. Now I was thinking between getting Fire for Ruin for Grotov's Burden, or getting the Adjudicator's Gavel. But given that I am running that I do have Annihilate in my hand already, I opted. I thought that, yeah, sure, I have an answer to a Grotov Stranger. Now, we also have Tome of Horrors, so when our units are dealing damage, they are milling the opponent, so that's cool. Now, for sure, let's play Unity Within. Let's have some decent Strangerios here. I could go for Savage Incursion on the Merchant. I want to draw power, kill Yushkov. That is what I would like to go for here. And yes, I did draw a non-depleted power source. Sure, those come into play exhausted, but we do not care. What we do care about is that Yushkov, though, so we don't want the opponent to power up as much for them to play Kairos or some strange things like that, or activate Grotov's Burden twice. And the opponent can see the writing on the wall and the dragons on the board, and they concede. Now let's get on to game number 2. Let's get on to game number 2. Come on, Caleb, click on it. Click, click, click. Stop writing and click. And I said stop writing and click because these 3 games are taken from a stream on the 27th of March. It was a Friday. It was a good day. Anyway, after redrawing against a fellow streamer, Toad's Olive, I see here that we do have a Hailstorm, and we do have some card selection. That is why I'm keeping this. Also, while you're playing this deck, you usually, not always, but usually you don't want to play Horus Trevor early on. Alluring Kirin makes our life slightly slower. Second Essence Feast is not what I need here. Also, Alluring Kirin, remember this makes all spells in our market cost 2. So even if I draw a Condemn, I can exchange a card from my hand only for, what was that one called? Adjudicator's Gavel, because it is the only non-spell there. And now opponent plays something that looks like Rat Relics, with a lot of relics, a lot of ramping up, and a lot of card advantage by grabbing power off of Lethrai Courtier. And I will want to put a stop to all of that in a moment. Alluring Kirin also powers and ramps up, so the opponent has 6 power to our 3. And I don't want to Essence Feast the flyer because it doesn't do anything, but what I do want to do is to Hailstorm the 0-3 away, because that is the main source of their card advantage. Yeah, because all the power cards are coming from the top of the opponent's deck, which means the opponent is more likely to draw some meat, like relics, that give them additional power cards. But I wanted to get greedy here. I wanted to go for Wisdom of the Elders first, because just getting that 0-3 out from there was not something I wanted to do. Waystone Fragment and playing some with bows and gaining some health and making them big and attacking us for 3. And right now we cannot take care of that 1-4, unfortunately, but we can draw some cards off of Wisdom of the Elders, and this is going to be a good time to play Hailstorm. So we can play Hailstorm. Permafrost doesn't do much right now because of that Infinite Hourglass. But yes, we want to say Hail to the Storm and play this, and we can even condemn the remaining unit, take Permafrost out, and grab probably Ruin. And we already have Horus Traver in hand, which means we can get rid of one of their relics. If this was a boar, obviously we could take care of like 3 relics, but whatever. Yeah, this is the matchup in which boar would have been better. All right, we have an Annihilate, we have some more power, we have that Ruin, but that would mean I have to play Horus Traver out. On the other hand, I opted to just grab a card from the opponent's deck, saying, okay, maybe I can get something that way and use my power slightly in a better way soon. Also, maybe I can power up those Essence Feasts soon. Who knows? So for this one, once again, stealing some cards. And this is a display of knowledge. It can grab me a second Tome of Horrors. At this point, I was just looking through my deck list and saw that the second Tome of Horrors is the only relic I can grab with that one. And here I thought about getting Horus Traver finally into play just for that fire influence, just to take out one of the Waystone Fragments. And someone asked in the chat why this one over the other one. Okay. Okay. So I want to get rid of one of those Waystone Fragments, so the units are smaller, and block the biggest one. So we take 6, they get a snowball, and we're milling the opponent for 1. How many cards is that? I don't know right now, but I do know that we are getting played Unkindness on. That is a very good top deck, this Hailstorm. So right now we have Lifesteal on those Essence Feasts, that's cool. Also, the Rat's Cage that I've picked up allows us to not trigger Unkindness, giving the opponent 3 2/2 Ravens. Also, we could grab another Tome of Horrors to have another rat in play. No, we don't need much more power right now. So let's grab a card from the opponent. And, ooh, it's a Smuggler. And I was thinking about the Smuggler because this Smuggler can grab one of our shadow cards here. But honestly, I should have played the second Tome of Horrors first, so that I milled the opponent for 2. Especially that I am playing it. Because I want to have another rat in play so that the Unkindness does not trigger. And I cannot let the Unkindness trigger because then the opponent has 3 2/2 flyers and we don't have any flyers and we're just dying. Opponent playing a seat non-depleted means they still have a sigil in hand. So let's just attack the opponent for 2. Let's mill them for 2. Almost lifesteal. Lifesteal, but almost deadly. Let's steal a card from the opponent. It's a Gentle Grazer, so let's play it so that we are playing a unit. Just hope I don't play Essence Feast. But yeah, I'm getting a reread, so I can grab a Ruin. And yeah, that was enough for the opponent. Okay, let's head on over to game number 3. Welcome to game number 3. Fun fact, and a little spoiler alert, I remember this from the stream. This was the second time in a row I ran into Mono Justice. I mean, what are the odds of that? In a world of 2 and 3 color decks, twice against Mono Justice. Odds are rather low, and 2 different players as well, so it was not just twice into the same person. Strange indeed. Alright, after keeping the second hand, we have 2 copies of Traverse Farm. And this is one of the few moments where I was lacking double primal. And I remember this version of the deck was running 5 primal sigils, 5 shadow sigils. After this, I removed 2 of the shadow sigils, so it's 7-3 in favor of the primal ones, just because of situations such as this one. And here, one would think about going Traverse Farm for Horus Trevor for getting second primal, right? Anyway, the opponent is running some Aegis units against us right now, and I'm really thinking about getting Traverse Farm just to grab 1 Strange Broker to have a blocker for later in the turns. Also, opponent usually wants to kill the farm, and we have a redundant farm in the hand. So this is Reunite, gain 4 health. Kind of, sort of, which is kind of good for a 4-cost neutral card, right? And this is Traverse Farm number 3. And here I was thinking what to do against this Mono Justice opponent, and opted just to mill them for 4. Just to have a blocker for future Traverse Farm. I'm not getting rid of an Aegis with Permafrost right now, and that was a good decision. Fortunately, and this is a very fortunate moment, the opponent did not have a 4th power to get rid of my Strange Broker. This is also, I remember, a turn in which I made a mistake, because I can permafreeze 1 unit, condemn Makar's Choice? No. Edict of Makar, the other one. I should have killed the 5/5 and frozen the 2/2, because in a Mono Justice deck, the opponent can be running some cards that give their units endurance, and defreeze that. So after I played it, I just, well, sometimes you click too fast before thinking, so, and here already punished. Not only being attacked for more, but also the opponent being able to invoke a Justice card. I mean, I was not counting on Reinvigorate specifically, but the opponent could also have had Wind Conjuring or something like that. Okay, so this is farm number, I don't know, a millionth, and getting Horus Trevor, playing Horus Trevor, getting second primal, finally, milling the opponent for 4, and having a chump blocker. And these are the Wind Conjuring that the opponent had in their deck anyway. Sure. And this is chump block territory. And the opponent has a stop on 2 Justice, so I'm thinking Finest Hour at this point. Tinker Overseer. Okay, so let's get rid of the flyers. Let's play Unity Within to have a slightly bigger blocker. Let's play Seed of Cunning and Hailstorm. I was also trying to bluff the opponent for them to block with the 6/6, but they opted just to take it in. So there's the Hailstorm. And I was thinking, sure, okay, so the opponent has a Finest Hour, I'm dead. But they're not playing it. Something stranger is happening. And our stranger is getting silenced, unfortunately. So let's turn our rogue stranger into just a plain stranger. Not that it matters. Also, I need to draw something against that 3/3 flyer, otherwise I'm dead. So I need like an Annihilate or a Permafrost. And that's an Annihilate, so we are back in the game. And that's a Reunite, and that is a good card because it can grab us another cool stranger. I'm playing this one Probably for fire, because against Mono Justice, what can they have that grabs something from the void? I don't know. Also killing their unit right now already. And this is very, very close, very on the brink. Crownwatch Paladin, sure, they're attacking. So we can chump block. Fortunately, we're getting a Triumphant Stranger, but also we're getting Traverse Farm and a Reunite. And a Triumphant Stranger, which is usually going to be good. I'm also thinking of grabbing Makar Stranger in here, just to steal a card from the opponent. Maybe it's the Warcried one. Maybe. Yes, it is. Unseen Commando. That's a good catch. The opponent plays Ghostblade Outcast and attacks with 2. Now, here I have to make some sacrifices, but I need Triumphant Stranger to stay in the game, because that one just plays a chump blocker after chump blocker after chump blocker. And turns out the stop that the opponent had was Lay Siege, and here they don't have any further stops, so it means they weren't playing with food as chat suggested, but in fact the opponent did not have anything here for us, against us. So they didn't have Finest Hour. Anyway, thinking about my place once again. Playing Cobalt Waystone was rather obvious. Now I wanted to play a Sight, and I wanted to play a Reunite for Horus Trevor, just to have some additional blockers, and play Unseen Commando as well. Getting Justice just in case. I mean, seriously, just in case. Having some blockers and praying to get finally a good card. Now, in this situation, I have to make some decisions. Well, this chump block is rather easy. I also wanted to double block their 4/4 with these 2 units, and single block their 1/1 with Triumphant Stranger. I mean, I was thinking about different options, but I thought, yeah, I need to start killing the opponent's units. They still have 3 cards in hand. None of them, hopefully, are fast. We regain some health as well. And the opponent has 1 unit to our 2 units and perpetual chump blockers. Pristine Light. Fortunately, Triumphant Stranger is not as huge. I mean, the opponent is getting 3 units back while also killing one of their big units, so it's kind of smaller now. So they're replaying 2 units. We can play Unity within on our Strangers, and we have a Deadly Stranger, so that is rather good, because right now each of our chump blocking Strangers is a very good Stranger. We're also getting Strange Broker to mill the opponents and to power up Savage Incursion even more. And we milled an opponent's 10/10 to loot. And that card would have been 10 out of 10 for the opponent here as well. So if they attack, we can deadly chump block. So right now we are in a rather good defensive position. I know this is not the main plan of the deck. This is just playing Triumphant Stranger and protecting the farm. And hopefully getting a second Triumphant Stranger and then double Stranger Madness. Annihilate is a decent tool. And we are getting Shavkas Stranger, so we can deal 3 damage to a non-stranger enemy. And I should have taken an Aegis out. Yes, good. Also, you have to remember, and milling the opponent off Broker. Now I have a Deadly Stranger, and so each Stranger that I play deals 3 damage to a non-stranger enemy, and it has Deadly, so it just kills anything. So each turn I can kill a non-stranger. Plain and simple. and fun. And for everyone. I opted to attack with the 7/7 because even if the opponent triple blocked, I had an Annihilate. I also have another one of these coming, and I need to start killing the opponent as well. So they are playing Telut, they are attacking with a unit. We can annihilate Telut in a moment. We are chump blocking with probably Sorcerer. I think I'd rather chump block with Sorcerer than Broker. Oh, we can also just block with the 8/6. Sure, why not? Yes, and it has lifesteal, so let's kill that. Now, this is where I also made a small mistake, because I'm playing two strangers. I'm playing Stranger off of Triumphant Stranger, and I'm playing Triumphant Stranger, so I should have actually targeted the Aegis Paladin with lifesteal twice. So yes, that was a mistake. Unless these happen simultaneously, then I did not make a mistake. And I would have to make some science on that, because, well, Aegis sometimes works in strange and mysterious ways. Anyway, the opponent is on 15, so if I attack with everyone, they're just gonna block one of my strangers, and one of my strangers will die. So I opted to do something interesting and attack with two deadly strangers, so if the opponent doesn't block any of them, they die, so they have to block one and get their unit killed. But given that all of mine were deadly, that was just an A space. That was a mistake, actually. Alright, that was game number 3. Finally, somehow, from the brink, and these are the best games to show you. Okay, enough of these games. Let's get back to the studio, talk about the deck some more. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Savage Broker in the Throne format. That was a wild ride against some strange decks, and as you have seen, it took me from Diamond 2 to Diamond 1. I still need to get to Master with this one, and I do have a couple of days to do that. And, well, to be honest, this deck plays really fun. I mean, this is not an all-out or all-in mill. This deck is all-in on Strange Broker more often than not, but you might have seen in the third game, it was just a very stranger game. And those tend to be fun as well, as long as it's not a stranger mirror with both having Triumphant Strangers. Anyway, this is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, if you're enjoying the content, you can support this channel by clicking on subscribe. Also, this video is being sponsored by NordVPN, your best source for VPN in these times. And there is a link in the video description to grab a good deal and to support this channel as well by using that link, nordvpn.org/Calebovitsch, or using code Calebovitsch on purchase. Thank you very much, and see you next week on another deck check.